Hey, listeners. I'd love to bring your attention to a company that's doing phenomenal work in the education community. Menti Educational Services is a company that is all about mentoring principals and teachers on how to reshape their teaching and leadership practices to focus on people and not policy. They offer a wide range of educational support services such as coaching, leadership development, and public speaking. In addition to providing those services, they are currently organizing their annual Equity Ingenuity Conference, which will take place virtually on Saturday, April 23rd. The Equity Ingenuity Conference is a 1 day virtual experience that aims to celebrate and showcase equity centered pedagogy, policies, and programs led by remarkable transformational educators such as this year's keynote speaker, Dr. Tyrone Howard, and many others across the globe. There will be several breakout sessions throughout the day, and those who participate in the event will receive a pre certification in equity and inclusion for only $100. Yes, I said it, $100. You can register today for this incredible event. To learn more about the conference and Menti Educational Services, you can visit the website at www.menti-es.com. Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of Identity Talk for Educators Live, the show for the unsung heroes of education. I'm your host, Sarfo-Mensah. And if this is your first time tuning into the podcast, I welcome you and I hope that you return back for future episodes and new content. But if you're a returning viewer or listener of the podcast, I welcome you back and I hope that today's episode is one that you find informative, enlightening, and of course, insightful. But before we get to the main event, as always, I got to remind folks, if you are on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button so that you can get future notifications of new episodes of the podcast, as well as other future content that's coming up. And of course, if you feel inclined to contribute financially to the Identity Talk platform, we do accept donations through Cash App and Venmo. So for those who are on Cash App, my handle is $IDTALK4ED. And if you're using Venmo, you can get my handle at IamESTL. That's KWAMESM. Thank you kindly. And that also goes for our listeners who are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever audio platform you're using. To find the YouTube channel, you could just search for my name, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. So that's KWAMESARFO-MENSAH. Thank you kindly. So that's the quick announcement. Now, I just want to get to this brother, our guest for today, because one thing that we don't talk enough about in this podcast is the importance of just leadership, what it means to be a leader, especially now in the midst of this Omicron era of COVID-19, where leadership is as crucial as ever, probably the most crucial ever. It's important for us to have leaders who can maintain their calm during adverse situations, but also to empower not just teachers, but just whoever is under them in general to get the best out of themselves when they don't believe it at that present time. So I want to bring on a brother who knows all about that. We're going to be having a live conversation about the importance of leadership, his journey, and everything that he's done up until this point to inspire other people to become leaders. So without further ado, I got to bring on the good brother, Dr. Ian P. Buchanan, onto the podcast to talk with us about his company, Nia Education Group, and just everything that he's doing to empower other people to become leaders. So let's bring on the good brother. Hello, sir.
What's going on, good brother? What's the good news?
Man, I'm here talking to you, and I was able to wake up in the morning. It's really that simple, man.
Real talk, real
Yes,
talk. Yes,
sir.
sir. I'm excited, man, to join you today and to engage with your listeners. Iron sharpens iron, man. Let's get this party started.
Oh man, that's what I
Yeah,
like to hear.
yeah.
And listen, before we get started, I know I talked about this off air, but listen, I gotta apologize to all the East St. Louis
Yes.
residents for the mix up. Listen, I should know better. It's East St. Louis, Illinois, not
Right.
Missouri. Let's not
Yeah.
get it twisted. So I want to shout out the East St. Louis listeners and viewers who are on the who are listening or viewing right now. So my
Yeah.
apologies.
Oh, it's all good, man. 89 blocks. We're used to that. But you know, it's not a rare thing. I lived in Memphis for a couple of years. And so you
Okay.
have Memphis, Tennessee, and you have West Memphis, Arkansas. And so it's just those things happen, typically separated by some body of water. So yeah,
Yeah. You know what? Another thing that people mix up is Kansas City, because there's a Kansas City in Kansas,
that's
but you
right.
have a Kansas City in Missouri.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? So people mix that up all the time. So it's kind of the same thing there.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
sir.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about you right now. So, you know, born and raised, proud East St. Louis native.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your upbringing and what ultimately brought you into the education field, good sir.
Yeah. So again, born and raised in East St. Louis, Illinois, a place that many people write off. There have been many jokes around East St. Louis. One of the jokes is, don't make a mistake crossing over from St. Louis and get stuck in East St. Louis. When I was in grad school, man, there was a book called Savage Inequalities. And so
Jonathan
on like,
Cosell.
yes, yes.
Yep.
And so in that book, he says, East St. Louis will be just like it is for many years to come, a
What?
scar of sorts, an ugly metaphor of chemicals and filth and effusions, a place for blacks to live and die within, a place for others to pass when making their way to St. Louis. So we've always had this troubling narrative about who we are, but we call ourselves a city of champions. So we got Miles Davis, we got Catherine Dunham, we have Jackie Joyner Kersey, we have scholars. In fact, the brother who wrote, oh my God, the book just escaped me. Wakanda. Yeah, the brother who wrote the book Wakanda. He is from East St. Louis. So yeah, we have a rich history. But in terms of myself, what brought me into the education field, man, I kind of came through the back door, to be honest. I have always been a black nerd, super just really about the books. And so I was really led into engineering. And what happened is I got into the University of Missouri Columbia under with an in the engineering program, and I was in college in that fight the power late 80s, early 90s period.
Okay.
And just a little bit of background about me. Born and raised in the Nation of Islam, so that kind of pro-black, do for self ethic was always inside of me. And so when I went to Mizzou, it was I call this my super senior year, my fifth year, right? So I'm taking an African American history course called, I forgot the name of the course, but I read a book, and the book was called Black Awakening in Capitalist America. Now, keep in mind, at this point, I'm super militant, super blackety black. And what this book talked about was this intention on the behalf of the United States government to really transition all of this energy that was coming out of the civil rights and the Black Power movement, to transition that and kind of turn down the Black activism. And so what they talked about was the government basically putting all of these Black and brown people in all of these corporate positions and pulling them away from the movement, right? And so when I read this book, I was like, okay, that's why I'm in inroads. That's why everybody is telling me I should be an engineer. And it just woke me up to say, okay, I don't want to be a spoke in the wheel of capitalism. I want to do something different. So I changed my major to, well, actually, I finished my degree up, but I decided to transition into education. And so at that time, I also had an opportunity to work with 3 Black boys at one of the local middle schools. Changed my life. Changed my life.
Wow.
From there, I decided to go ahead and get certified. So I became a mathematics teacher at the high school level. I taught pre-algebra through pre-calc, was a school leader for more than a decade, and then the rest is history.
Wow, man. Shout out to the math educators. So you got another math educator right here.
You know it. You know it.
So
Shout out
always
to the
got
blurs, to the Black nerds.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Man, but I think a lot of us went through that back door to become
Yeah.
educators. I know that was the case for me because think about it. How many brothers like ourselves grow up wanting to become educators? It's not something that's advertised or marketed heavily, particularly in the inner city and other parts, where we're from.
Yep.
So when we get to college and we start to unlock the magic of what it is to be an educator, it's like contagious. You just want to keep on coming back to get more
It's
of that
nothing like
magic.
making a difference and impacting the world in a different way.
You're
And see, for
right.
me, man, I come from a history and a legacy of educators. My uncle was a principal at my high school for more than 20 years. And believe it or not, from junior high school through high school, I had 3 Black male mathematics teachers.
Wow.
And so they set the mold for me. And so I already knew what it looked like to be an outstanding mathematics person who built capacity for our kids. And so I knew I already had a script. I already had a script, a role model, a formula. And so I just followed the script, man, and tried to make the impact the best way that I could.
Man. And then as you were entering this new journey of becoming an educator, was a part of you like, listen, I'm from East St. Louis. You have all these negative narratives out there
Oh,
about
yeah.
my town, where I'm from. I want to be the counter narrative to all that and let folks know, like, no, we got greatness up in here, as you mentioned at the beginning
Yeah.
of your sharing of where you're from and all that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
was
that
that a
counter
huge part
narrative
of it?
thing. Yeah, that counter narrative thing is super important to me. We've always defied the stereotype. And I think for me, being a mathematics teacher was super important because I knew that in some of these working class, middle class, affluent neighborhoods, you're not going to find a 25-year-old Black man teaching pre-calc.
Right.
And so I was very passionate about that because I wanted white folks to see our brilliance, but I also wanted our kids to see us. And I knew that I could motivate more kids to take those upper level math classes if they knew that they were going to be in Mr. B's class. And so that was really what drove my passion.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And not only your passion, but your purpose, which is a perfect segue into Nia,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
company, right? Nia Education Group. So for those who aren't familiar with the Nguzo Saba principles, if you don't know anything about Kwanzaa, if you don't know anything about, Malena Karanga, like just the history of it, Nia is just it's purpose.
Right.
And
Exactly.
you were able to find your purpose as an educator and start this company. So just tell me what that process was to start Nia Education Group and what is the overarching mission of this initiative, this movement.
Yeah, man. So I've been in this work for about 25 years now. Fun fact, I've never had any job over 5 years. Uh, but really, one of the main reasons why I decided to transition and do my own thing was because I wanted to multiply my impact. I left a position as a chief academic officer in the school district of University City, which happens to be where Nelly graduated from. And I was making an impact, but I knew that I could make a greater impact by working directly with leaders. And my purpose, my passion, what I'm really about is making great people greater. And that's really happened throughout the course of my career. And so one of the reasons that I wanted to change and do this Nia Education Group was first to multiply my impact. And then I wanted to do work that was more aligned with my passion and my purpose. And again, I know that part of my purpose and part of my passion and part of my skill set is making people better. And so I was like, I know that Black and brown leaders need high quality executive coaching and executive leadership support. So I tried to figure out, how can I get in this game and cultivate and build the capacity of more Black and brown leaders? And so Nia Education Group really has a couple different, I guess, wings or arms, if you will. One is the executive coaching. So that is the building capacity of great leaders. So right now I'm working with about 17 leaders across the country. But I'm most proud of the fact that I'm working with 11 Black men who are in leadership. And I call that group the Leaders of the Now School. So I'm working doing executive coaching again, about 15, 17 folks across the country, including some super powerful African-American women. But then the other part really is to transition and share so much of the expertise that I've been able to gain over the course of the last 25 years. I mean, I started off my career doing informal science education at the St. Louis Science Center. I was a GED teacher, ACT instructor, mathematics teacher, higher ed teacher. I teach a literacy class at one of our local universities. So I wanted to have an opportunity to use all of my strengths and not just one, which was the real technical aspects of being a chief academic officer. And again, I think part of the other part is, Black male leaders specifically are really almost in a space, in a world unto themselves. It's a very lonely role sometimes. And I wanted to be one of those persons that a young Black principal or assistant principal or CEO or executive director or superintendent can say, hey, Ian, I'm really struggling with this. I need some support. I need some coaching. I need some guidance. And I said, if not me, then who? And so I took the baton and I ran with it. And so I left my position making more than $150,000 to some people thought I was nuts, but I left the position, walked away from a position to do my own thing. And 6 months in the game, I am so excited about the work that we're doing with Nia Education Group.
Man, it's awesome. And as you're talking, I'm reminded of a story that I want to share with you. So years back, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, I was at a summer conference for the organization Black Educators Rock. And of course, one of the annual speakers who's there is Principal Kafele. Shout out to OG
absolutely.
Principal Kafele.
Big shout out.
Yes, sir. Also been a guest on the show. Just a mentor from afar, great man. So I actually asked him a question because we had a male educator group, right, during the conference. And I asked him the question, well, for folks who are trying to get into educational leadership within a school district, but they keep hitting these roadblocks as they're trying to gain mobility, career advancement, down those paths. How can they get to that destination when those barriers are in place? And he literally told me, and I'm paraphrasing, that listen, like for Black men, we can't just stay on the road. We got to do detours. You might have to get off the highway, go down some back roads, hit back the highway up again, and then maybe go through some other back roads just to get to that same destination.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, like, well, white folks is just a straight path. No detours, nothing. So in saying that, I want to know if part of your motivation for creating Nia was to create a pipeline for Black men like yourself so they wouldn't have to go through those barriers that I just mentioned. Was that
absolutely,
part of the motivation?
Man. Absolutely. I can just remember so many times that I needed to just talk to someone. To someone who looked like me, who understood my experiences And in St. Louis, we had a couple of folks who really filled that role. One of them was my mentor, and his name is Vernon Mitchell. And Vernon Mitchell passed maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. And I can vividly remember driving down the street, actually calling him. And then I realized, oh man, he's not even here anymore. And I was like, well, somebody needs to step in that gap. And, you know, I love when Eric Thomas on the What's Your Why, when he says, I'm that new guy. I'm the one. When your mom ain't in your life, when your dad ain't in your life. And that's really the attitude that I took. I was like, if not me, then who? I'm that new guy. And so I really feel that. And I feel like we have an obligation to keep this work going because we make a lot of dumb mistakes. And I want to make sure that my brothers don't make some of the same mistakes that I made. And the other part that I really want to model is what it means to be an instructional leader. Too many times we get caught up as, and there's nothing wrong with this, as the culture builder, the relationship, the one who can calm little DeAndre down, the one who can deal with the irate parent, the one who could be the shield. But no, we are intellectual bosses. Imhotep was real. He was the first multi-genius. And so that's where we come from. And so I wanted to model that, man. I wanted to be, I didn't want to just, there's nothing wrong with this. I didn't want to be the HR director. I didn't want to be the operations director. I didn't want to be that. I wanted to be the chief academic officer, the person who is chosen to help lead the academic direction of a school district.
So let me ask you this, because as you probably know, because you're in the field,
yeah,
we've had an influx of accelerated principal licensure programs come about in recent years.
Oh yeah.
And for me as an educator, I feel like a prerequisite for a school leader is
I know where you're going with this.
In the classroom, you feel what I'm saying? Because what I'm seeing is there are a lot of younger administrators, and listen, not trying to be an ageist, but I'm just trying to put facts out there. You have a lot of people who come straight out of maybe their bachelor's program or master's program. They do a 1 to 2 year principalship, residency, complete the program, and then all of a sudden, before they even hit 25 years old, they are principal, which in some instances is great because you want to get young blood in there.
Right.
But at the same time, the credibility is questioned because it's like, how are you going to lead facilitators, skilled instructors and facilitators when you haven't spent nearly as much time as some of your staff members in the classroom? What do you say to that type of criticism that's out there?
Man, I got so many thoughts about that. So I think one is when I recognize that issue, I said, all right, Ian, so what are you going to do about it? And so I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of those younger administrators and I'm going to commit to coaching them. These 26-year-olds, these 27-year-olds, these 28-year-olds who are relatively inexperienced, but who have so much talent that they're thrown in the game. And so I work with a large portion, my coaching cohort, a lot of those folks check that box. So that's one thing. The other thing is, so right now I'm reading The Death of King, talking about the last year of Martin Luther King.
Yep.
And so when you just think about how they thrust him into leadership at such a young age, he didn't necessarily have all of the experience. A lot of it he learned on his own. And one of the reasons that they made him a leader so early on is because he had not been co-opted yet. He was still green. And so I do see some advantages. And the other piece that I'll say is many times teachers complain and say principals forgot what it means to be a teacher anyway.
You hear that too. You're right.
And then the final thing that I'll say about that is it's really about that training that happens once you're in that role. because these teacher ed, these leadership programs don't prepare us to do the work in our urban communities. So what's important is all of the supports that they get and the coaching that they get. So I'm a little bit torn. I do understand the importance of experience, but this is also the last thing that I'll say. Some people teach 20 years. Some people teach 1 year 20 times. And what I mean by that is they doing the same old stuff over and over and over again, and they have not advanced. So really, what difference does it make? You got 20 years in the game, but you really got 1 year 20 times, Groundhog Day 20 times.
Wow.
And so there are just so many ways to look at it. I don't think anything in education is an either or. What I think is it's about the supports. I think you identify good talent. You understand if they have a track record of making measurable gains in whatever they do, and then you wrap support around them and make sure that they can be great. What I don't like, though, is dumping so many inexperienced educators in our most vulnerable communities. And that's what tends to happen. We have the uncertified teachers, we have the low experienced teachers, the low experienced leaders. And so I do see the value of experience. That's a long way to answer your question, man.
Yeah, and I think it's very much nuanced. So you can really take it either way. Like I know for myself, the best principal I ever worked under was Dr. Salome Thomas L. Shout out to him. Had a chance to work with him 1 year while I was still teaching in Philly. And what made him so great was the fact that he was somebody who got his hands dirty. He didn't stay in his office all day. He was running the chess club after school, taking the kids to chess tournaments. He was popping to teachers' classrooms, giving his raps whenever he felt like he wanted to bust a freestyle.
Right.
And he was just a life of like he's a life of a party, and he's still doing it to this day. Still doing it. And those were things that resonated with me as someone who was still trying to get his own classroom.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in my mid to late 20s, still trying to figure out this education thing. Cause I was a late bloomer. I didn't start off wanting to do this, right?
Yeah.
So
not too many of us started off wanting to do this.
Right.
So.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I've had principals like him, but I've had other principals who were strong curriculum leaders. They knew their pedagogy, they knew their instruction. They're really strong with that.
Yeah.
But they were able to pair it with their ability to connect.
Exactly
and
right.
interact with staff members.
Yep.
So I feel like they have
the relationships matter. That the inter and intrapersonal, the emotional intelligence, that matters. But then the technical skills matter, and then the leadership skills matter. And so all of that matters. And then the other part too is wrapping yourself around a strong team, a team of gangsters. You have to have that because no one can do it alone. And so to me, the smartest leaders say, here are my strengths, here are the areas where I'm short. Let me fill my team with people who can complement me. And again, like I always say, iron sharpens iron.
Right. And I was going to ask about that because what I find sometimes is you might have some principals who, well, you do have some principals who they don't know everything.
That's right.
Right? But they don't humble themselves enough to just say, listen, let me delegate this to maybe this AP, this assistant principal. Let me delegate this to somebody that has the appropriate skill set to perform this task, as opposed to me just trying to be paternalistic and take it on my own because I feel like I have to make that final decision.
Yeah, man. It's interesting that you say that. One of the things that I just really been marinating on lately is J. Cole's Pride is the Devil. And just really thinking about that and how it applies to leadership and how, as Black men, we've had to, and they call it the cool pose. We've had to develop this cool pose or this disposition, this way of comporting ourselves in order to deal with the realities of racism. And so I think that plays a big factor in our leadership as well. And so it can actually inhibit us from being the leaders that we want to be, because we wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our face and shields our eyes. And so that's another thing that I just think we got to deal with as Black men.
Yes, sir. So, we're doing a lot of talking about just Black leaders, Black men education. So I have to ask this, and I think it's appropriate to ask this, right? As somebody who has been in the game as a educational leader as long as you have, what allows you to maintain this long-term sustainability, within this field without succumbing to the racial battle fatigue, without succumbing to the pressures that do come with being a Black male in education? And this also applies to Black women as well, because they have to
Absolutely.
deal with their own intersectional battles, just being a woman
Yeah.
in education, but also being Black. So when
Yeah.
Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw talks about intersectionality and just
Yeah.
that whole dynamic,
Yeah.
it's real in education for sure. So
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
talk to us about, what does it mean to navigate those waters and still be in it for the long term?
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned our sisters too. And so I've really had a chance, and I'll get to your question, but I've had a chance to work alongside some really outstanding African American women. Two in particular, Brittany Pagnett. We worked alongside each other. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you saw, she was on Find Your Roots last night on PBS. With Henry Louis Gates, which was an awesome one. So I've had a chance to work alongside her, and also Sharonica Hardin Bartley, who was just recently named one of the 5 superintendents to watch in the country. And so shout out to the African American women holding it down in this work. And so in terms of the self-care piece and how to do this, I've been doing the meditation thing very seriously and very religiously for the last 7 years. It's been a game changer for me. I am much more balanced, much healthier, physically, mentally, psychologically, spiritually. I think it's important to surround yourself with like-minded people. I think it's important to set boundaries, to say no, to understand that we are not super people.
Yes.
That's one of the things that's hard for us. For me, it's also getting a different shot of energy. Like I told you before, I've never had a job over 5 years. And so I've done a lot of transition. And so just the renewal of a new role can also be energizing. And one of the things that I have done is just to give myself a break. I'm very intentional about going to professional development opportunities that are going to enrich me. And then also give me a little bit of break, give me some time for perspective. So I like to go to NAPSI and Kozbach and those kinds of things, because I'm around like-minded people. It allows me to step back, to have some joy and some perspective, to understand that I'm not alone. Like you said, BER, Black Educators Rock. Those kinds of organizations are important. And I think the last thing, honestly, is to confront the self-saboteurs that are in us. White supremacy, we all drink that Kool-Aid. We all consume that fog, that smog. And so we have to understand that many of our actions, this thing about perfectionism, looking at an email 17 times before we send it out, making sure we have the right diction, making sure we're doing all of this, those things cause us extra pressure. And so we need to confront those things and say, I am who I am. You got to take me or not.
Come on now.
Yeah.
And since you bring up white supremacy, I mean, paternalism and power hoarding are 2 major things that happen, especially as principals.
You already know.
Which is a perfect segue into this next question I want to ask you. So, outside of what I just mentioned, right? What do you believe are the common errors that school leaders make when they're leading schools? Based on just your experience, if you have statistics, that's great, but just from your eye, what do you see?
Yeah. I would say one of the challenges is really doing the tough self-work and really understanding, you remember when Jordan did this? when he hit that shot.
The six threes in the
Exactly.
finals. Like,
Exactly. I don't know. Sometimes when you're great, you do stuff that you're great in, you just don't really know it's what you do.
come
And so I
on.
think it's important for us to really know our strengths. I think that's the first thing, because that is what gives us resonance. And that is what gives us, it's almost like when people wear those "what would Jesus do" wristbands. It's something that you can tap into, that you can use when times are tough. So I think part of it is really understanding your strengths and doing that self-work. And then I think the other part is really understanding the ways, the self-limiting behaviors, mindsets, and actions that we operationalize that keep us from being great. I think another mistake that we make is really not creating what I like to call conflict-rich environments, an opportunity for two-way feedback, for us to fight it out and then hug it out. I think that's important. I think another, and I call it the V formation leadership. Leaders don't always have to be in the front. But one of the things about the geese that are in V formation, when they're in that V formation, they actually are more aerodynamic. In other words, they're more effective. And so we have to have these V formation kind of leadership models, where some people call it distributed leadership, where we don't necessarily have to be in the front. We can be on the side, we can be in the back, but we are always honk, 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 cheering on the person that's in the front. So we got to get out. So we need to be experts, but we also need to know that if you got gangsters on your squad, let them take the game over. Let them take the game over. That's why I love Rajon Rondo, and I love the point guard. I love all point guards, because that's really my style of leadership.
You've been in different settings, right? You've had different jobs. You even said to yourself, I don't stay at a job for more than 5 years, right?
I don't do that.
So what I want to know is, in each of those different stops you were at, how did you personally measure your success as a school leader in those different settings? What were your goalposts, if you had any?
Yeah. I'll tell you like this. So when I was growing up, my elementary school principal, his name was Elliot McKinney. Shout out to Mr. McKinney. He's still alive. And one of the things that he taught us was, Black people, we do this call and response thing. Not the best. He said, not the best. Our response was the very best. And so I've always had this high bar of excellence, whether it was athletics, whether it was academics. My classmates, my high school classmates always tell me, you were one of the most competitive people I ever knew. I'm trying to be the best in everything, the best. And so when it comes to this education thing, part of it is the academic performance. How are our kids doing? And not how and so one piece is the academics. And for me, it is especially those students who are most vulnerable.
Yes.
And so how are they doing? Let's disaggregate their achievement. And so how are we doing with the students who are reading significantly below grade level? How are we doing with those students who experience a whole lot of trauma? How are we doing with those students who may have some very significant special education needs? So how are we doing to the most challenged? I think that's one piece. The other piece is really asking this question that we ask, and how are the children? And so I measure my success by being able to see joy in classrooms, by being able to see a modicum of joy and belonging, and a sense of I can be myself, even though COVID has made that very difficult. So I think that's part of it. Do I see cultures of love, high expectation, and belonging in schools? And then the other piece is really thinking about the long term. What happens to our students once they leave us? What kind of post-secondary options do they have? What does their life look like then? And I think the other part is I measure my success in individual places. How cool is it when you go to the grocery store, when you go to the show, and a kid that you taught 10 years ago wants to introduce you to their family? Or they want to send you a positive shout out on a social media. So part of it is that too, knowing that you made a personal impact. But for me, primarily is, I think it was Howard Fuller who said this. Shout out to Howard Fuller.
Yes.
Beast. I think he said something like, we love our kids to death or something like that. We don't educate them worth the crap, but we love the crap out of them. And so my thing is, I want a couple that love with those high expectations and insistence that you are not the best, but that you are the very best. And so those are just a couple of the ways that I measure success. And I will say this. As chief academic officer, the team in our district, we were able to record the highest growth in ELA and mathematics in the state. I will say that. We have one of our educators, Mrs. Christina Sneed, who was one of the who was at the forefront of all of this 1619 work in schools. As a middle school principal, I was able to do some extraordinary things. 2.5 years of growth with my most challenged literacy kids. So I'm about that work.
I hear you. Now, I know you're not actively, a principal right now, but I want to create a scenario for you. So if you will.
Yep.
As you know, COVID-19 has ravaged so many school communities. You have teacher shortages left and right. You have teachers quitting the profession left and right. You can't even get subs to come in to fill in those vacancies because they don't want none of that smoke. Right?
Well, hold on. Even with the subs, now we've lowered the standard so much that really all you gotta do is have a post to sub.
Listen,
you heard what 18 with a driver's license. It's crazy. It's getting crazy now, man.
Did you hear what happened out in Michigan, man? Now they actually approved the bill where bus drivers, secretaries, and other support staff can be teachers for a temporary period of time because they're struggling to get qualified substitute teachers into the classrooms. Like that's how bad it's become. And you even have universities, I believe universities in Oklahoma, universities in Florida, and other parts of the country who are shutting down their colleges of education and teacher training programs because they just can't get enough enrollment of teacher candidates to get in. So it's a domino effect happening right now.
It really is. It is the deprofessionalization of our profession.
Oh my!
It's really what it is.
A whole article on this, man. Oh,
yeah. Bars. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, man. Listen, but the question I had for you is, with everything going on with COVID, you're a principal at a school. You know that your teachers are missing time. You're probably flip-flopping between in-person learning and remote learning because of COVID cases increasing.
And you're teaching class, you're taking out the trash,
taking out the trash, close contacts, all this stuff we've been hearing about.
That's right.
We're in January.
Yep.
Typically, 3-4 months from now, we're typically talking about standardized testing.
Right.
We're getting ready for that run.
Yep.
Now, given what's happening in schools, you're a principal.
Yep.
Does that cause you to rethink how you evaluate teacher performance, how you do your observations? And then also, do you believe that standardized testing, not that I'm sure you probably didn't think it was a priority even pre-COVID, but do you feel like there should be a de-emphasis, if you will, of standardized testing given the current context of COVID-19? Just from a school leadership standpoint.
Yeah, I think at this point, I'm not sure that it's fair to anyone to hold schools accountable for standardized high stakes testing.
Yes.
I'm not sure that that's the best thing. I'm not sure that it ever was. But I also know that follow the money. Follow the money. These testing companies are getting paid by doing these tests. And so part of it is a capitalist thing.
Yes.
But I actually think that at this point, I think it's rather inhumane. And I don't think it's fair. And we already know what's going to happen. The students who are at the margins are going to continue to have the struggles, and our more middle class and affluent kids are so I mean, we already know what the test data is going to show us. Not only that, but when you think about compromising instructional time and how important it is, just think about how much time we take to prep for the test, to do all of the things that go along with the test, and
Yep.
then take the test. And so if you think about the instructional minutes, the sacred instructional minutes that are being compromised right now, it's really criminal.
Mm-hmm.
In the opinion of Ian Buchanan. And because I'm on my own boss right now, I can say what the hell I want to say. So yeah, I do think it's criminal. But I was thinking about this earlier, because again, I'm right now I'm reading the King book, and then I was just thinking about the tremendous sacrifice that folks had to make with the Montgomery bus boycott.
Yes.
For all of that time walking, catching cabs, your grandmother, your auntie, your big. What if we just said, we ain't taking these tests? We're not taking them. What if we? I mean, what if we just said, what if black and brown superintendents across the country just said, nope, nah? What if?
That's a big question, but the same can be said about black teachers. What if we just made a grand exodus and said, we're no longer subjecting our students to all this trauma that's associated with, these COVID-19 outbreaks and everything? What if we just said, nah, this is just not right? Yeah. But I think part of it too is we're still beholden to these ideologies of whiteness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's hindering us from doing what we know is right, in terms of sometimes speaking up, combating, these issues and things like that. So I think
I think part of it too is survival.
That too.
People still have to eat. People still need a paycheck. People have families. Now. And so I do understand that. And that really kind of gets back to why I actually became an educator, was because I talked about that whole corporate piece about really trying to a really harsh phrase, tame the native, so to speak, I think was really kind of how the art. And so once you kind of condition a person, then you can pretty much get them to do anything they want to do. Like that. It's like that picture of the elephant. I think there's an elephant, and like what's holding the elephant down is like some really like flimsy stake. The elephant can just break away from that if the elephant wanted to, but the elephant has been conditioned not to move. And so I think we have to really challenge the conditioning. And I also think that this chaos, there's some good that can come out of this chaos.
Oh, that's always been the case. Yeah. I mean, there's so many opportunities for redesigning, rethinking, innovation, creativity, but yet we are in a school system just in general that does not want to they still have an allegiance to protocols and systems that we know have proven not to work. And I think that's what's been problematic about all of this.
Yeah. I mean, to add to the fact, brother, that honestly, we are just tired. This has been so tough. BC is going to start meaning before COVID in a minute.
Ooh.
Because that's how we're going to start thinking about education. What was education like BC before COVID? I mean, seriously.
Yeah, that's where we are, man, with this education system. We're at the crossroads. But listen, we could talk about this all night.
Right.
but I want to make sure we wrap this up because
Yep.
it's approaching the hour, and we just had just a dope conversation, which is going to continue because there's just
Absolutely.
so much that has to be unpacked. But I want to make sure we do our lightning round so we can get to know a little bit more about Dr. Ian,
Yes,
what
sir.
he's doing outside this important work.
Yep.
How's he unwinding? How's he maintaining? Because this is heavy lifting
Oh
that's
man.
happening right now. It's heavy lifting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
And I'm a born empath, and so I feel it. I feel it.
mm,
I feel it.
yeah,
Feel
it's
it.
deep.
Mhm.
So I want to know from you. And you mentioned this in the beginning. Outside of meditation, what are some other ways that you're maintaining self-care for yourself?
Yeah, yeah. I really I mean, it's related to meditation, but I've really learned to get comfortable with silence.
Mm,
Yeah, I've just really learned to get comfortable with silence, man. It's one of the ways that I do self-care. I work out, I try to get it in 4 or 5 times a week if possible. I really like to spend time in the gym or at home. I'm a music person, and so my go-tos are my little soundscapes on Pandora, wherever, my chill hop, my lo-fi, and you mentioned Miles Davis, and so there are really a couple of songs that really help me with the self-care piece that Miles has. Blue and Green is one, Flamenco
mm.
Sketches, and then another song called It Never Entered My Mind. And so I just kind of put those in rotation, man, and that really helps me. Again, I'm into the meditation and mindfulness. I'm into prayer, and I'm into hanging out with the noble clan of Kappa Alpha Psi. Yo to the Noops.
All right.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I think y'all Founders Day just passed.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I know we're recording this on the 13th of January. So my wife's a Delta.
Yes.
So, you know,
Crimson and cream, baby, all
yes,
day.
yes. So shout out to the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated
Yep.
on their Founders Day.
Yep. New
So
oop.
yes, for sure.
Yep.
All right. Give me 3 influential figures dead or alive that you like to invite to dinner.
Yeah. hmm Uh, the first would have to be Imhotep,
Mm,
the world's first multi-genius, because he's the foundation of geometry and most things mathematics. He was an architect. He was a philosopher, uh, and the brilliance, the people enjoy music and painting and stuff like that, but I feel the same way about mathematics and the brilliance of creating the first step pyramid and all of the exact precision that's in that is just absolutely amazing. So I want to know, like, was it? Yeah, I'm just really curious, like how uh, Mandela. Uh, I
mm,
am a big Mandela fan. And just because he lived so many different lives, if you think about his original upbringing, then getting kind of called out, kind of like as one of the elite, and going through that, and the fact that he could be in jail and for 27 years and still be in physical shape, and not only that, but he was a scholar and he was a military gangster. And so when you bring both of those together, that man was brilliant. And I think the last one would have to be King, especially because in his last days, he was so hated. He was so hated. He was so hated. And not only that, but when he decided to say, okay, I want to start kind of evolving, or not evolving, but expanding this movement so it's class-based and race-based with the Poor People's Campaign. And then when he started to really challenge integration, he really rethought his beliefs. He said he felt like he was leading his people into a fire.
burning house.
Exactly, burning house. Exactly. So those things, and then his challenge of capitalism and the military. Nobody else was doing that, and so that took a lot of balls.
It did. It sure did. And what people don't realize as we're approaching MLK Day
Yep.
next week, is that near the end of his life, see, people like to think that, all right, him and Malcolm had a beef.
Right.
They always wanted the same things, except
Absolutely.
philosophically, there are some differences.
Yep.
And I think it's okay to have those philosophical differences, but I think near the end, they both kind of was able to see each other's perspective and start to evolve in their thinking.
What I like to say and use in today's language is I say both of them really started to they really embraced an anti-racist philosophy towards the end of their lives.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
they did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and last question. Give me 3 words that's going to define your 2022. 3 words.
Yeah. Iron sharpens iron.
And there it
All
is,
day.
y'all.
All day.
As what we're doing today. But Dr. Ian, man, this has been a phenomenal conversation.
Oh man, I love it.
You already set the bar for 2022. That's all I'm gonna say. You set
Hey,
the
that's what we
bar,
do in
man.
East St. Baby.
You
That's
set
how
the
we do it in the
bar.
89 blocks. We set the bar. We set the pace. That's what we do.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming on and
Can I
just
just do
sharing
one
your
small plug
knowledge.
real quick, if you don't
Yeah,
mind?
go for it. Go for it.
Yeah. So I'm excited, man. In the next couple months, my book will be coming out. It's called King, and it's a 4-part approach to leadership for Black men. K is know the king within. I is inspire greatness in others for collective impact. N is navigate towards the north. G is gravitate towards the great. And so I'm excited to launch this book in the next couple months, and I hope that folks will purchase it.
All right, y'all heard that. Is it open for pre-order?
Not yet. It will be soon, but not yet. I'm finalizing things now. I just sent my last version to my book folks, and so I'm trying to make this happen, man. Hopefully around March it'll be ready to go.
Yeah, man. I gotta get up on it, man. Start drafting my chapters.
Come on,
So
man.
I
You
got
got this. We got this.
yes, sir. I know, but you know how it is, man. You get your writer's block, you gotta just get back on it. You know what I'm
You do.
saying?
It's a challenge, man. It really
Yeah.
takes discipline, and it also takes putting yourself in those right mental spaces where you can be free and you can be creative.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But man, thank you so much for coming on. And so that people know when the book is coming out, when they can pre-order, please let them know how they can connect with you on social media. Also, feel free to share the website for Nia Education Group and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So my website is www.niaeducationgroup.org. I'm on Twitter, Dr. Ian Buchanan. I am on Facebook, Ian Buchanan, and I am also on I'm on all the platforms. Ian Buchanan, just Ian Buchanan. You can find me either Ian Buchanan or Nia Education Group. But I'm excited to have this opportunity. And I just want to give a shout out to you, man, for the work that you're doing. This is so important for us to elevate our voices, especially those who really have not been able to elevate their voices, man. So thank you for this opportunity, brother. Keep doing what you're doing.
Man, I appreciate it, brother. And this is what it's all about. It's about just creating space for those who need their voices to be amplified. That's all it is, but all about elevation.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So thank you so much. And man, we're going to connect soon for sure.
Respect.
All right. Respect. All right, people. So we're about to end another phenomenal episode of Identity Talk for Educators Live. And as always, I wish you all good morning, good afternoon, and good night wherever you are in the world. And we're going to do this again another time. Peace out, everybody.